Afua Hirsch. She says that Meghan has faced racist media coverage, wrote a stinging piece in the New York Times suggesting Britain is racist and has driven Meghan out. Daily Mail journalist Sarah Vine says the Sussexes' actions are thoughtless and damaging. And brand expert Nick Eady, who says worked with Meghan and thinks the couple could be set to make millions. Well, I think that's fairly obvious. Afua, let me take you to task, if I may, with the piece you wrote in the New York Times. I took great exception to your basic premise that the media hostility towards Meghan, which has only been in the last 18 months, the first 18 months, you got universal praise and positive coverage. And you acknowledged that in interviews. I've seen them. But then she'd made a few missteps and a more negative amount of criticism appeared, which I thought, in the main, was fully justified. Inaccurate stories are not justified, but most of the stories, actually, as turned out, were true. Your premise is this is all driven by racism, that Britain's basically a racist country and the media's been racist, to which I say, on behalf of the media, where is that racism? I haven't seen it.
I didn't say it was all driven by racism. I mean, Piers, if we take your kind of obsessive articles about Meghan, I'd say there's a dose of misogyny and xenophobia in there as well.
Every paper today has literally like 10 pages. I've not been obsessive. I've criticised Meghan and Harry where I felt they've deserved criticism. And also, when people tweet those columns of mine, they don't include all the positive ones. They're trying to create a false impression that it's all been one-way negative criticism. It hasn't.
You've been rewriting history here, Piers. From the beginning of Meghan's relationship with Harry going public, there were references to her being somehow associated with gang crime.
No, there weren't.
Compton.
I know that piece.
There was
no, hang on. You can't just say this.
No,
okay,
this
is an article about where she grew up.
That she came from gang-scarred Compton.
Where did she grow up?
There was the question of whether there would be a hail of bullets if the royal family came to visit.
Where did she grow up?
She grew up in Los Angeles.
Where?
In Compton.
No. She didn't. She grew up in Crenshaw, which is 10 miles from Compton.
Right.
I live in Los Angeles for a third of the year.
I spend a lot of time in Los Angeles as well.
Well, you clearly don't know your Comptons from your Crenshaws.
I know Compton and right? I know Crenshaw. And
she comes from the border of South Central LA, which is one of the most gang-infested areas of the world. Clearly, when it was revealed who she was and what her background was, it was an interesting story that that's where she's from. It doesn't make it racist to say that.
The university where I'm a professor is also in South Central LA. It's not only gangs and gun violence.
You know that South Central LA, immortalised by the movie Straight Outta Compton, has a lot of gang violence.
So can we just acknowledge...
It was an interesting aspect to this woman's background that she came from that part of Los Angeles.
That one element of South Central LA.
You say it's racist and I say it's factual.
That is a racialised narrative.
It's factual.
So there are other things happening in South Central LA, Piers.
Had she come from Outer Mongolia, that would have been the story.
But Piers, if she was white, would people have associated her with the gang violence?
Well, let me put this to you, Afua. I would argue that Camilla Parker Bowles, Princess Diana and Fergie all got 10 times worse coverage in the media, as long as it was good coverage, 10 times worse than Meghan Markle. And a clear example I would give you of how far the media have gone to actually protect Meghan Markle, look at the 6-week holiday they had in Canada. Not a single paparazzi picture, no intrusion, allowed to do their thing. And they responded to this, as they did when the press were incredibly positive about their trip to South Africa, with a torrent of negativity and their new media rule book, which only involves having people who are going to suck up to them.
I just find this surreal. There have been allegations that she's associated with very racialised forms of crime. There have been discussions about her exotic DNA. Her newborn baby...
Is her DNA not exotic by royal standards? She was the first mixed-race person to ever enter the royal family.
This is the context.
Why is the word exotic? Why do you take exception to the word exotic?
Because it others her and associates her with a history...
She's an African-American joining a white royal family.
As other and
the word exotic is not derogatory.
Well, listen, I'm a woman.
You can't just say these things are racist when they're not.
I'm telling you, as somebody who's lived the experience of being a person of African heritage in this country, that there are narratives that are regularly used
You see racism in everything.
People like you. No, I don't.
No, but are you accusing me of being racist?
I'm saying that the narratives you're perpetuating, yes, they're racist.
Really? Where have I been racist?
Where have you been racist?
Tell me.
I mean, I come on here usually to discuss debate.
Name one example of me being racist.
On the side of racism.
No, you can say it, but then you have to prove it. Where have I been racist?
What do you think about the British Empire, Piers?
Huh?
The British Empire.
Well, what do you mean? What do you think of the British Empire?
What do you think about the British
Empire? It doesn't
Empire?
exist anymore.
Do you think that it was positive that Britain went around the world trying to civilise people they regarded as savage?
I think it had positives and negatives, as I've always said.
And what do you think is the legacy of that project of telling people of African heritage that they were closer to savages? Do you think that entire history, which ended, by the way, in the 1950s...
I think a lot of it was deeply flawed
and irrelevant.
And I think a lot of it was good, like most people.
So the royal family...
Why am I a racist?
But because you Listen, my definition of racism is that we've inherited a very racialised history. Either you're committed to trying to dismantle and change that history of racism, or you're part of it.
Where has the media been racist about Meghan Markle?
The media has wholeheartedly thrown itself, not all the media, but sections of it, especially the bits that you work for, Piers, wholeheartedly thrown itself
that I work for, wow.
behind, thrown itself behind continuing that project.
Okay, Afua, you said all this in the New York Times. You say we're demonising a woman of colour. You're the one bringing race into this. I've seen no...
That's actually... Prince Harry made a statement about how racist British media has been.
They are driving a narrative that this is all driven by sexism and racism, which I think is completely grotesquely wrong.
So is Prince Harry someone who sees everything as racist?
I think he's being encouraged to, yes.
By people like you. And this is another racist
by people like you
narrative,
going to the New York Times and basically telling the Americans that we're a racist country driven by racist media, and that's what this is all about.
Do you not see anything wrong with you?
You can't name a single example.
I've just given you 3 or 4.
No, you haven't.
Right, should we go through them?
Well, the Straight Outta Compton was one of them, Piers.
She
literally comes from, as the Mail put it, nearly straight out of Compton.
Baby compared to a baby chimp. And when people like me said that was a racist joke, then people like you said that wasn't racist.
Danny Baker was a BBC broadcaster who said, and I have no reason to disbelieve him, he had no idea about the background to Meghan Markle.
But she had African heritage.
Danny Baker is not remotely racist, as anyone who knows him knows, right? Danny Baker was unceremoniously beaten up on Twitter. Within 7 minutes, he deleted it, so I'm terribly sorry. I had no idea.
Did you acknowledge that that was
Wait a minute. He then got fired and vilified. That's what happened to Danny Baker.
Why?
Right.
Why did he get fired? Why was there an issue with that
He got fired
tweet?
because he put a chimpanzee baby out as a tweet without knowing, as he said, without knowing anything about Meghan Markle's background.
Imagine yourself in the position of the only woman of colour in our lifetime to be a senior royal who is vilified by the press, as they vilify all the royals regularly, to be fair, but is in an especially vulnerable position because she's the visible difference about her is her African heritage. And then on top of that, there are slurs used against her that have
Sarah, you've defended... Sarah,